Welcome to Stormwatch by GreyNoise Intelligence. Each week, we drop the latest info on what's happening at GreyNoise, Census, and VulnCheck, take a look at a roundup of important and timely cybersecurity topics, toss out some expert opinions, and of course, drop the occasional conspiracy theory.
Today, we have a very special episode. We're talking with GreyNoise founder Andrew Morris about intercepting millions of spoof packets, ICMP packets to be specific, across the internet sensor fleet. And did he discover a secret message? So I'll hand it back to you, Emily. Do we have a special kickoff question of the day? Since Bob is obviously not with us.
Yes, like every week.
The traditional line alive.
We do. So, question of the week, Glenn, I'm going to actually start with you because we've established a pattern of you copying folks' answers.
There's no way that anyone's copying this one.
Okay, all right. So, what would the name of your ship be if you were a pirate captain?
All right, so I guess we're gonna go for NSFW pretty quick, but we're going with Kraken's Booty.
That's a choice.
That's a choice. You know, we have
the
sea monster.
Yeah. Are we allowed to question each other's choices?
We have the sea monster aspect.
Kimbers would be Shiver Me Kimbers.
Ooh,
that's so good.
Dang, so fast. Yes.
Wow.
I've been waiting for weeks for someone to ask that question just so I could bust that.
Yeah, you've had that stored up. Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Did our question come from you? Because that seemed very well planned. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Kimber, do you have an alternative, like a backup right now?
No, not at all. I think we're just gonna go with that. Thank God, because I totally forgot that this was the question. I was unprepared. I was gonna come up with something, the SS Topo Chico, because these are delicious.
Hey, that's legit too.
They are really good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Andrew, you've named Kimber's ship. What's yours?
Oh man, don't ask me that.
Okay, Kimber, you name Morris's. Kimber, you give Andrew his.
Conspiracy Theory Central. Actually, no SS. Just this is the place.
Yeah.
Or maybe it would be Noise Storm. Actually,
Noise Storm would be good because I'm a loud dude. So
that's fair.
You know, you'd hear it coming or something.
Absolutely.
That's fair. You make it.
I think it would be actually a submarine, and it would be very, very large.
All right. How about we cannot forget our amazing Overwatch, Ashley. Ashley, what about you? What's your? Oh man, I can't.
Weird.
Read this.
I'm definitely going to be.
Something that is Italian for I'm definitely going to be a sick. Going to be sick.
A sick.
It does sound pretty in Italian if we could say it. It looked pretty.
It looked beautiful.
Everything looks and sounds pretty in Italian. It could be anything.
It's valid. That is valid.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I feel like we also have to. Oh yeah, wait. I have. Okay.
What is yours?
I think mine would just be like ship. Because I feel like I'd be a terrible captain, a terrible pirate, and I feel like I would just be frustrated all the time.
Mine would be Ship My Pants.
There we go. See, I knew like we'd get rolling.
This is what happens when there's no adults in the room. It's wonderful.
Bob.
Yeah.
No
yeah. Well, so I think I'd be remiss to not do the whole Bob spiel of like, we have a podcast. You're probably listening or watching if you already know that. But you can also go to stormwatch.ing to catch up on past episodes. To stream the next one live. But
and feel free to engage with us online because there's going to be a lot of. I think there's going to be a lot of questions
on the information superhighway. I'll tell you one thing right now. You are going to leave this podcast with more questions than answers. This will be whatever the opposite of informative is my guess.
I choose to think of it as inspirational, personally.
Inspirational.
This is not Radio Shack, is what you're saying.
These can coexist.
Yeah. This is the anti-Radio Shack podcast. Or at least episode.
You're gonna leave this one dumber than
hopefully. If we've done our job right, no thoughts for the rest of the day. Just stop thinking.
Or maybe we never see Andrew again because he gets deleted from the existence.
Oh boy.
All right, we should jump into that.
Oh man.
So yeah, maybe we should get started. Like, I don't know, where do we even begin here?
All right. Okay. So
Hey,
Just
I'm swan diving right into it. Okay. So hey team, hey gang, hey GreyNoisers. Thanks for hanging out with us and welcome to Crazy Hour. So 4.5 years ago, January 3rd, 2020, I woke up to two interesting pieces of information / news. One of them was that GreyNoise was broken. It just fell over. And like when you tried to go and see it, it wasn't working. And I was like, that's weird. And it's because we were seeing like millions and millions of IPs flowing through our pipeline, where we're used to seeing, a couple 100,000 IPs scanning the internet every day. And at the same time, also the other news was that the United States military had blown up Qasem Soleimani, the general of the Iranian National Guard, and so the Iranian Republican Guard. And so those two things happened at the exact same time. And then over the next few months, we would continue to see this phenomenon where looking at the packets in GreyNoise, all of a sudden we went from seeing a couple 100,000 IPs a day to seeing many millions, tens of millions of IPs hitting our sensors. Very quickly analyzing the traffic, it was pretty obvious that the traffic was spoofed. There was no completion of TCP three-way handshakes. And so anybody can actually spoof traffic on the internet. That's a fun little tidbit for you. The majority of the internet is configured in such a way that it will not allow it. If a router is passing a packet along that shouldn't have gotten to it, then it'll say, hey, no dice, I'm not going to route you. But that's pretty much optional on the internet. You don't actually have to do that. So anybody at all can just, enable packet spoofing and just blast packets around the internet. You can't really do anything, super, super interesting with that, but you can cause, annoyances. And going back, people have been doing this since the dawn of time. So over the next few weeks and months, we would continue to see these thrums of spoofed packets hitting our sensors, millions of them. And we were able to identify some patterns in the traffic to isolate it and remove it or filter it so that we didn't have to, basically pass all of that along to our customers on account of the fact that it is happening, but it's not happening, but it is. And so the noise storms have been going on periodically ever since then. They typically come in TCP traffic, which is unusual. And sometimes it's in ICMP traffic. It has pretty much never really been UDP traffic. And we are seeing a big one right now. So if you go to GreyNoise at this exact moment, go to the visualizer and you hit last seen today, you'll see that we're getting scanned by like 5 million IPs out of Brazil. And we're probably not getting scanned by 5 million IPs out of Brazil, but that traffic is hitting us. So I could go on and on and on. But 4.5 years in, we still don't know why, but the traffic this time has something interesting in it that I can show you guys. Let me pause there. What do we think about that? Kimber, Emily, Glenn, what do we think?
So everybody's probably thinking, and I see a comment in the chat about, a couple of comments in chat about, some theories.
Oh, wait, I can't see that. There we go.
Well,
okay.
Comments. Honeypot DOS, or internet version of a super secret number station. And this is where I like to theorize, like before we dive in even deeper. I think there's a couple of key concepts about signals that are important here. So whenever you're trying to locate something using a signal, you do a technique like a broadcast. So you cast a very wide net and you see what responds. And I think there's a couple of key details that pull us in here where we can see that this is some kind of broadcast. It's a wide net. It's hitting everything that we've got. We can definitely take a look at other people's data and see that it's also hitting them. It's not just targeting, GreyNoise.
I can corroborate that by we recently looked at our API logs, and many of our customers also started enriching many more IPs against GreyNoise than what they were usually doing. And when I looked at which IPs they were, the number one country of origin was Brazil. So all of a sudden, at the exact same time, Kimber, to your point, that a lot of these were going on, a lot of our customers were also enriching Brazilian IPs against GreyNoise.
The other important thing is the detail that it's not ever UDP. There's not UDP noise storms. And so if you are uneducated in the dark arts of networking, UDP means that you just blast information at somebody. It's up to them if they want to pick it up or not. Like there is no shaking of hands. It's just like we're blasting. Truly. Just blast mode. And
Danny DeVito
like,
meme.
Exactly. So if it's not UDP, that means that they care. Potentially, they're either manipulating something within the TCP/IP stack, or they care who's potentially responding to this traffic, or it's some kind of manipulation of network hardware, right? Those are kind of the three options.
These are, I think, I think that it's interesting that it's never been UDP, because UDP is the de facto for any kind of denial of service. And when you see denial of service, this typically when you see spoofed crafted packets blasting across the internet at very high volume, either from lots of places or made to look like it's coming from lots of places, UDP makes the most sense. UDP has an incredible amplification factor. So like not just UDP in general, but like SNMP, UPnP, SSDP, a lot of these have amplification factors where you can send a small amount of traffic and get a large amount. So what I find interesting about it is, Kimber, I am not there with you on what you are certain of, but I am with you in that it's clearly not for a denial of service, or it doesn't, right. Traffic is not a traditional denial of service to like knock things offline. Maybe for load balancers though, because stateful firewalls and load balancers and stuff like that do have TCP stacks. And so, yeah, I don't know.
I think two things that are worth like calling out specifically as we kind of dive further is one, that this has been coming in like waves over several years. So like in waves. So it's not always happening, but when it does happen, at least high 90% of the time, would you agree, Andrew, that it coincides with something that is physical and kinetic in nature, which is the other?
Oh, I hate this point, you guys. I hate this point so much.
Wait, why do you hate this, Kimber? I'm curious.
Because
nobody knows what we're talking about.
That is not provable. Sorry. Go into it. Feel free to go off on it.
So several of the noise storms have coincided with kinetic military action. The reporting of news, basically news reports will come out within a few days, roughly around the same time that some of the largest ones have happened that have corresponded with newsworthy military action of some kind. So the most noteworthy of which would absolutely be that the first and the biggest one that we saw was the same day, roughly the same time, that the United States killed Soleimani. And then there have been some others.
The flip side of that argument, though, is it feels like there's always, unfortunately, some large kinetic thing. So not saying that that's the case, just saying that as we're feeling for theories.
We really said conspiracy theory hour, so I will welcome. Yes. I will welcome it.
So, and we may have talked about this and I might have missed it, but in terms of like patterns around like where like the sensors that you're seeing get this activity, is there any pattern there, or is it sort of like GreyNoise wide, or does it change with each event?
There are patterns. So a lot of the time, we've seen the evolution of the noise storms. I believe that it's not necessarily all one actor, but I do believe that it is a very small number of actors that are doing the ones that we see, because they always follow a sort of similar shape and pattern. And you can actually see individual pieces of it change over time. The first one we ever saw hit absolutely everybody on the whole internet, hit all of our sensors at all the same time. It was very large. Since then, they've been increasing in intensity, but they've also been increasing in targetedness. So that means that they hit smaller parts of the internet, but the relative amount of traffic that hits them has increased quite a bit. Now every noise storm that we see tends to be the largest one we've ever seen. And they tend to hit the smallest number of our sensors that we've seen. The very long going Brazilian one, if you're a psycho like any of us, and you look at GreyNoise data every day or related, you'll notice that for the last like 6 months, Brazil has been the number one source of the Brazilian IPs have been number one in GreyNoise. And so that's odd, considering that, Brazil has probably 1/10 the amount of IP space as China or the United States. So that just doesn't make any sense.
Probably a good time to talk about like all of the general spiciness that is going on in Brazil right now. Like it's like, why Brazil? Well, it's generally under unrest right now. They banned X. They're trying to generally suppress their country, all the citizens, from being able to say things. They're trying to keep things on lockdown there. I don't remember the origin of all of this. I don't remember what originally popped all of it off, but it's just like a really unresty time there right now.
Yeah, there's domestic issues. The part of the challenge for me, though, is that the way that I think about this is that there's no reason to believe at all that the traffic that we see has anything to do with anything in Brazil. That's the interesting thing for me. Now, I do notice, though, that the traffic that bleeds over into other IP space. So taking a step back, every time there's a noise storm, I spend a few hours trawling through the raw traffic to try to find patterns and commonalities in the traffic itself, in the signals themselves, to be able to isolate it so that we can try to see what the data has in common. And the noise storms that have been happening lately, when you isolate the traffic, the other places that it's coming from, and I'm using air quotes for those of us who are listening on the radio, the other countries that it comes from are other Latin American countries that like are adjacent to it. So Argentina, Chile, Colombia. And so, yeah.
So do we think that this would require like heavy, like massive resources, medium amount of resourcing,
to
low
broadcast
resources
this much traffic?
to broadcast this much traffic to this, at this scale? Like, what kind of backing would be required?
Yes. Just so not necessarily super heavy hardcore resources. I mean, you need a fat pipe or some fat pipes, and you need chops, right? You need networking chops to be able to make it happen, and you need to have access to spoofers, systems that have the ability to put spoofed packets onto the internet, and that's it. But the volume of traffic that we see is relatively significant if you take into consideration that GreyNoise only sees a sampling of it, and that there is a lot that we aren't seeing. Then it's a pretty heavy amount of traffic. I mean, it's a pretty significant amount of traffic.
I think it's also important to hit on the like spoofed idea of just like when we say spoofed, but what this is like standing in for is it doesn't complete the full handshake, and it is coming from IP addresses that are you wouldn't necessarily see traffic from these IP addresses. Like if it was just saying like, oh, it's some AWS like data center in Brazil, like that it's coming from. We wouldn't necessarily make the correlation of like this traffic is spoofed. We would say something along the lines of potentially spoofed. Like there would be a little bit of nuance to that.
Yep.
But when you,
Yeah.
spoofable.
And I'll also add that we have no reason whatsoever to believe that the traffic is actually originating out of Brazil. I mean, no reason whatsoever. Now, there is a bunch of crazy stuff going on in Brazil right now, and there's and some of that is happening on the
But
internet.
this predates that. Like,
Yes.
at least the initial start of this predates
Well,
the
it
current.
predates at least my understanding of
Fair.
the domestic challenges that Brazil is having right now. This has been going on for the traffic's been coming out of Brazil for probably between 6 to 12 months at this point.
What does it look like?
Who said that? So there's there are two that are happening right now. One is TCP. Here, actually, I could just show you. One is TCP. It's spoofed TCP packets on destination port 443. What runs on destination port 443, guys?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing that I think matters.
Not the entire internet.
So destination port 443 and the source IP address is always a pretty much random Brazilian IP address. And no TCP three-way handshakes are completed, etc. And that has been hitting probably at this point the majority of the internet. The other storm that's been going on is ICMP traffic, which again, these are all very dubious to be using if the goal is a DDoS. So I still go back to saying that stylistically it doesn't feel like DDoS to me, but I've heard theories that that this is a form of denial of service. I will show you guys a snippet of the traffic for those who are watching. Let's see the best.
While you're bringing that up,
Please.
Kimber, I wanted to kind of direct this question at you, but like, what do we feel about? We recently have talked about like BGP hijacking, or issues in that arena. How do we feel that could overlap with this? Could it just be a silly little fat finger?
So I had this point in the back of my head, and thank you for calling it out so blatantly, Glenn. It's important to consider internet misconfigurations happen all of the time. All of the time, somebody fat fingers it. And that is just part of being human. We don't dunk on these people for messing up the routing of the backbone of the internet. But one of the things that happens with ICMP, for example, like once you change a BGP route and you mess it up, you're going to be blasting traffic, and maybe it's just trying to see if the network is reachable. So sometimes BGP weirdness can appear like a noise storm. And I think that that's one of the really important distinctions that anybody researching this phenomena has to make, is you're going to get a lot of things trying to locate things when a BGP. I'm really oversimplifying this for the masses, but
I love Kimber BGP talk.
You're getting a lot of things trying to talk to stuff that's just not going to be there. So when we see stuff that's extremely localized, it's like you got to make sure that the traffic looks like, you got to find the patterns in the traffic. That's all this is like pattern matching. So if you can look at the traffic and you're seeing like a variety of stuff in it, then it's going to be some sort of BGP like mess up. If it looks like Andrew is trying to pull up right now and we're waiting.
I'm
amazing. Yeah.
I'm really pushing the limits on my hotel internet, going through the VPN and also doing a
really
podcast
are
at the same time.
God.
It's a bold choice.
It is bold. So if we want to distinguish between, is this misrouted traffic and is it like actually something of interest worth looking into, we look at the byte level at this point. We're looking at the byte level patterns of the traffic. So we're taking a look at like the headers, the actual data contained in the packets. And so this is how we get down to the point of where me and Andrew really like galaxy brain.
We have the vision. We have the vision.
We have the vision. We are haunted by the vision, as
That's
it
right.
were.
That's right.
And that's how you find things like secret messages in ICMP packets.
Right. That and my latent psychosis. So these are some patterns of life of traffic over the last month by protocol, filtering down to only the things that have come out of IPs that are registered in Brazil. And I make that distinction clearly because, again, we have no reason to believe that this traffic is actually coming out of Brazil. This pattern right here, this TLS, these humps, this is actually Palo Alto Cortex, or Cortex Expanse, right? So this is their sort of daily or weekly scans that they run on web apps, right?
Very predictable.
Yep. You can actually see this really interesting surge of TCP traffic right here. The storm that we are still seeing in TCP is not hitting the new fleet anymore. It's only hitting the old fleet, which is being decommissioned as we speak. Yeah, it is. So drilling into, we could drill into either one of these, but I'm going to go into the ICMP traffic because this is the goofier one. This is like an interesting hump of it right here. I can just zero in on this. So then now I'm just basically expanding it out by time here, and I can say, all right, cool. I only want to see the ICMP traffic.
So for the people who are listening just audio wise, basically like what we're looking at is a set of frequency graphs. And when you're taking a look at signals, what you want to look at is the things in the frequency graphs that look fucking weird. Sorry, language, but because you know that is something interesting.
Yeah, and internet background noise actually has a understandable rhythm. As weird as it sounds, it is chaos, but it's a pretty consistent chaos. And when you see things that are outside of that chaos, you know that something is going on. So filtering down to just this ICMP traffic here, this was one of the first things that stuck out at me as I was like really digging through this traffic, trying to figure out what it is. So these are all ICMP echo requests. And when you dig into all of them, so I'm grabbing this first one. Yeah, here, what do you guys see right here in the message?
I have to squint. Loved
zero or love
zero.
Oh, this one says, well, it's always love. So, I mean, I can go to another one.
Oh, we need more love.
Yeah,
we do.
Love.
But is this like different?
Blast and love.
What, Emily?
No, I was just saying that it's like love followed by a different character. Each of these.
Okay, Emily, you and me are birds of a feather already. So, so now, and
Equal
this
L.
Every one of the ICMP packets is embedded with the ASCII string love in all capital letters. And then there are different bytes before it, and there are different bytes after it. And then there are always 0 pads. So there's 0 bytes that are padding it towards the end. And so then if I wanted to get, like real big mega brain, I wrote a script that pulls this data. It's not really a script, and I didn't really write it. ChatGPT.
You said if you were, and then you said, and then you did. Just following.
Hang on. So sharing my, how do I share my TMUX terminal? All right. So this is a completely batshit insane T-Shark command that extracts all of the fields here for a PCAP of the Brazilian ICMP noise storm.
And if you're just listening to this pod, I'm gonna have to apologize.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody, but
honestly, I doubt anybody watching this pod can really follow along with the various things that we're tacking up on the wall and drawing conclusions between right now.
So
packets.
This is packets with the word love embedded in them and what could be an offset and what could be data. But the reason why I find this so interesting, and I'm going to stop sharing now, is because when you think about it, when you think about it, hey, David, I just saw a comment from him who helped me, who's been helping me think about this a little bit. So the interesting thing is that one thing that we literally know is happening is that somebody is sending a packet with an embedded message. Even though in this case, the embedded message is literally just the word love. It doesn't have to be any bigger than that. We are receiving the message, and then we are responding to the message with the echo. We're saying the message back. We're sending the message to what we think is the source, but it actually is just as realistically the destination that whoever is sending the message wants it to go. Because my view is that the source is not actually sending that message. Somebody else is. So I am now communicating somebody else's message on their behalf at a very large scale with arbitrary data inside of that. And that's damn near as far as I've gotten.
The why. I like that it's layers. There's a lot of layers here. It's like an onion.
It is.
Well, and it has to be something, or presumably something that, because messages are going to get dropped and lost, right? Since it's just being thrown about. So it's not, if it is a encoded message of some sorts, it's got to be something that's able to, where you don't need the full chain, basically, right? Like streaming video, right? Like you drop packets, you have to be able to.
This is a good point. There is a lot of repeat data, even across all of our sensors. So if somebody is attempting to communicate data or a message, it's less about the size of the message and it's more about the secrecy of the message, and so the anonymity of the sender, and ensuring that it gets where you want it to go. Because we're seeing, again, a tremendous amount of repeat data.
And we probably haven't been able to figure out the frequency of the repetition. Like, is it a day? Is it 3 days? Like, when does it start over?
When the there are patterns in the offsets, but like I only allow myself to look at this raw data for like an hour or two a day, because if I don't, then I'm gonna change my name and move to Sri Lanka.
Have you ever thought about like what it would take to like send the appropriate like, I really like the thought of like going down of, okay, so it's ICMP, it's got love in it. Like, what would be sent back? Like, what would the response be? And so like, how would you unlock this? Do you follow what I'm trying to say? I feel like I've got my like,
well, yeah, and
I'm going down the rabbit hole.
Well, the other bizarre part is that, you know, the messages can actually be intercepted anywhere along the way. So that's one interesting thing, is that if this is being done by like maybe a state actor or a hosting provider, then, you know, maybe the whole fact that it's Brazil is just that it's like, hey, we don't give a shit about Brazil. We just care that all of the packets go the route that they would go if they were trying to get into Brazil or Argentina or Chile. Because physically the packets have to make it there somehow, right? So that's one thing that I've thought about in like the commonality of it. Yeah. So somebody dropped a comment in here about TTLs. Whoever is doing this is intelligently spoofing TTLs. So
that is one of the interesting points.
It's one of the things that immediately made me latch onto this, because the TTLs are being spoofed from inside like the center of a bell curve, which is to say, by the time the packet hits us, or the packets hit us, the TTLs tend to be like between 120 and 200. And so there's like a huge space, like nothing is 40 hops away on the internet. The internet's not that big. There aren't 40 hops, right? So to start with your TTL at 255 or 128 or 64, you're never going to get a legitimately created TTL, or a packet that is legitimately created with a TTL of 150. It's never going to happen. It makes no sense unless somebody is doing this who like really knows what they're doing, or at least they know how to manipulate TTLs to make things hard to track.
Just gonna let that set in for a moment.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this went like real deep on ICMP packets, like real fast.
Yeah. But primarily, ICMP is supposed to be the most basic protocol on the internet to establish is my connectivitying. Like,
yeah, it's
do
like,
I have
it's really, it's for troubleshooting and passing debugging messages and stuff like that, right? And so like if you're, it's almost like the safest bet for getting a packet from A to B. Like even if there's something that's like no TCP, no UDP, like it's going to move an ICMP message, you know, unless the final destination doesn't respond to ping, which is fine. Routers are going to routers be routing ICMP.
And like it's guaranteed message delivery unless your destination is unreachable. And unreachable means either the routing is messed up or the hardware is not powered, or there's something like functionally wrong with like your thing that's unreachable. It's just not online. So
there's a really good comment from Brianna, and I actually was thinking the same thing. Are we thinking this is a kind of number station or botnet chatter or something else? Like I had the numbers station thought as well, even though it sounds like the messages aren't particularly interesting. I mean, love, like cool, that's cool, but like,
do you hate love, Emily?
No, I love is fantastic. I just don't exactly know how useful it is, especially at that volume.
Hot take.
All right.
No,
I'm looking for theories.
Wow.
I'm looking for theories.
Message.
We've got DDoS, which is a theory, even if it's a little contrived. We've got DDoS. What are some other? All right, numbers station. Okay, covert communications. Is it possible that this is a method of covert communications? Sure.
I think it's I'm fully in the it's trying to locate something camp.
Trying to like locate
like the target or
I
think like
that
seeing where the packets go or where they float out, or trying to actively scan something that will respond away.
There's something out there that is responding to this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it doesn't matter if that response makes it back.
Okay.
And that's what's interesting to me.
Emily, you should take a PCAP to the team.
I would love to.
And you should bounce it off
everyone. I would love to do that. You could like kill an entire Friday for us doing that. So and then some. So yes, we would love to.
Thinking about the fact that at least in the last 12 months, these have been focused on appearing to originate from Brazil. What would be reasons why Brazil, right? Like if someone's doing GeoIP filtering,
opportunistic.
Why would Brazil be the chosen apparent ingress?
I can tell you what jumps to mind for me immediately.
Okay.
The internet and IT infrastructure in Brazil is abysmal. Like even just the notion of the concept of like trying to enforce product security, cybersecurity laws, things like that. It's just historically a serious challenge in Brazil. And so when I think about it, because I've seen noise storms, I've stopped noise storms before where we started seeing it, and I reached out to the operators that were upstream of the origin networks, and they were unplugged or unhooked, right? De-peered from the internet. Reach out to our contacts at Level 3 or at Cogent or at Verizon. There's only 12 tier 1 internet service providers, right? So you really only need a relationship with a few of them, and people will just unplug stuff from the internet when it does stuff like this. This one is ongoing because my guess is that whoever that person is maybe isn't checking every one of their emails, so to speak.
So there are a lot of economic ties.
Well,
Go ahead, Gimmer.
I was just like,
'Cause
this one
again-
is going on so long because the infrastructure in Brazil is shoddy enough that like nobody's paying attention to the mechanisms they have to turn it off.
Do, right?
Yeah. Whereas if you're blasting from US DoD space,
right,
it gets shut down.
which is actually common with noise storms. We do
Yeah.
see a tremendous amount of spoofed packets from a network known as the DoDIN, the DoD Information Network or something. And we see that actually very often, which tells me that I'm like, man, this is like a real ballsy move. I wouldn't do that.
I guess in my mind, I'm almost going a different direction with like China is Brazil's largest trading partner.
Yep.
Is there other nation state things at play here where the top destination, I think, so I was doing some quick Googling while we're talking, but it says like Brazil is one of China's top destinations for direct foreign investments. So, like when we think about
China recently announced on Chinese media that they're conducting military exercises in China. But so again, part of what makes this so hard is a lot of the natures of the uncertainty around it. It's really, there are so few things that we can be certain of in the way that you actually like dig through this. I'm an Occam's razor guy. So like for me, I think that this is somebody like screwing around. I think it's somebody screwing around. And I think that Kimber, there's a big part of me that thinks that it's a misconfigured router that's just been going on for too long.
Some intern like 2 years ago did a thing.
Yeah.
4 years ago did a thing.
Yeah.
And then the Brazilian just keep through.
There is either significance of Brazil or there isn't. And if there isn't, then it has nothing to do with any current events that are going on in Brazil. Brazil is irrelevant. It's just the country that somebody picked whose IP space they're going to pretend to be.
But you've mentioned it's come from or appeared to come from other IP spaces.
Correct. Adjacent to Brazil.
Okay.
And it's even, one of those, with earlier noise storms, it's come from everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's one of those things
more,
where like somebody may have come up with this technique and then now like what we're seeing now is just some script kiddie who doesn't understand what they did.
Could be.
Because I think a lot about the fact that Geeknik like posted that like this was literally posted on Twitter like by Geeknik about embedding messages in ICMP, and this is one of my favorite like techniques to use for a capture the flag competition is embedding things in ICMP. And so it's one of those fun things where it's like, did somebody just stumble upon something where they didn't realize the consequences of their actions was that they were going to be blasting the entire internet with like ICMP packets for what, 2 months?
I don't know. And now we're not seeing it in our new fleet at all. We're only
which is so weird
seeing it in the old fleet.
Is your logging on the new stuff messed up?
No, it's
new stuff should be logging even more.
We're doing a lot of infrastructure turnover. So whatever the targeting is hasn't been refreshed, and we've redeployed more than once. The old fleet is, I mean, it's old.
Yeah.
So I think it is in no particular order. Could be covert comms, could be a lazy DDoS, could be a misconfigured router, could be insano asynchronous command and control, could be creating noise, creating distraction, could be a way to either identify or knock offline a specific kind of device. I think about IP cameras and things and IP phones that speak VoIP, which is always UDP, or whatever the real-time streaming protocol is, RTSP, which is also UDP. Maybe just making those not work. I think that's possible. I think somebody could be fucking with security companies like us. I think that's possible. I think that I think it's possible that I've heard a theory that somebody is pushing prospects to buy their anti-DDoS services, and then when they don't, they blast the crap out of them with unrequited SYNAC. These things are all possible. Could be a really loud. The biggest challenge that I run into with a lot of these is that every one of these theories that I run into, I could tell you 10 easier, like less sophisticated, less advanced ways to achieve that same effect. So I'm like, why would you put like thousands of gigs of traffic onto the internet to port scan somebody? Or
why would you spend the money to do this if the return is nothing?
Yeah. Used to be the very first one that we saw originated, it was hitting like a static list of 12 destination ports. So it was like 12 different destination ports that were interesting-ish. But now the storm that we've been seeing, the TCP one, is exclusively 443, and it has been for like, you know, the entirety of the time that we've seen it.
Yeah. I'm sticking in my asynchronous CNC theory. This is my favorite. I'm sticking to it.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay, Bob, I'm glad you said something. So the ASN, the autonomous system, the network, basically that
The route.
The ICMP traffic is being spoofed from is the CDN organization that exclusively services QQ, WeChat, and WePay.
What?
That's important.
Yeah. And they're pretty much exclusively IPv6 on their back end. So on their transit side.
That's also important.
Yeah. That's interesting. Because like how many security people just pretend like IPv6 isn't a thing?
I'm right now pretending like IPv6 is.
It's not very kind.
It's not demure.
We saw a comment in here about likely 443 so it doesn't get blocked. I agree. That's one thing that in my mind, the one thing that I know, one thing that I feel pretty confident about is that the goal is to get a message out.
Yeah.
Because of the repeat data, because of the ASCII, because of the choice of in certain cases, I don't know if the ICMP actor and the TCP actor are the same. I know that these storms have corresponded with each other time-wise, and they're both coming out of Brazil. But yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it's a compromise Avanti and side of WeChat.
I will say also one more thing. Whoever is doing the TCP one is intelligently spoofing window sizes to make the packets look like packets that were generated by Windows, Linux, embedded systems, things like that, with about a static list of maybe 8 different window sizes. And whoever it is, if you're listening to this, that's pretty sneaky. That's pretty smart. Yeah.
Didn't we have a theory at one time that like these were to obscure other things that may be going on inside of them? Like you create a big boom to obscure smaller things.
Yeah. Distraction.
I always thought that was an interesting theory.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, right? Like when you just think about the psychology of, you know, the entry level SOC analyst who maybe doesn't have a wildly deep knowledge of TCP/IP or something like that, or the nature of the internet and the fact that spoofing packets is even still possible in the year of our Lord 2024. But it's I think, you know, you're sitting there, you're doing your job. All of a sudden you start getting a bazillion packets hitting you. You sound the alarms that you're getting DDoSed, you're getting the crap scanned out of you. Somebody spearfishes your EA and is ransacking the organization, and everybody's too busy looking over here at all this weird scan traffic that's real noisy and like real there.
Well, so also to be clear, GreyNoise is unhinged enough to be logging all of this traffic. Generally, like the common enterprise is not going to even pick up on this at all. Most people are going to have no idea this is going on, and that's why it's interesting.
One of the reasons why I initially got so hooked on this is that, and I'm not going to say the name of the company, but it's a really, really, really big, valuable SaaS software company, and their F5s all went down. All their F5s went down, and their CEO was like, we're getting hacked, we're getting DDoSed, and somebody on their security team saw me tweeting about this weird spoofed packet traffic, and they looked at it, and it was the same exact time that we called out the noise storm, that the entirety of this big software company's kind of, you know, their product that people use, it just fell over. And that was that.
Yeah.
So I think,
but remember, that was also the one that hit everyone on the whole internet, and we don't really see that very often anymore. Now it's a lot more surgical. It hits smaller parts of the internet. So I don't know. And it avoids places. The one that we're seeing right now is almost not hitting AWS at all. And it is absolutely blasting us on like Cogent and on Lumen and Hurricane Electric and other like brick and mortar hosting providers.
That makes sense.
yeah, avoid, yeah.
Kimber,
So
you
we
were the
probably
one who
need
pointed
to. Go ahead.
Kimber, you were the one who pointed out to me that it was always hitting our sensors, that it was exclusively hitting our sensors that pretty much look like stateful firewalls that are, you know, they're listening on everything and they're, you know, whatever. And we've as far as I know, we've never seen a noise storm hit something where we wouldn't respond to the packet. And that's still true.
There you go. That's why it's not hitting the new sensors.
Well, it is, but it's hitting the new sensors that are running the backwards compatible old stuff.
Exactly.
So we have
yeah.
We have like 9 minutes left or so. So we need to like start pulling out of this a bit. But is there?
Me and Andrew Morris could talk about this for 24 hours straight.
Forever.
Shit.
I know.
Yeah.
You could do a Red Bull live stream.
Yeah.
So is there, if folks maybe want to get copies of these packets, is that a possibility? Or maybe share some information? Like, Andrew, what could people do to help unpeel another layer on this massive onion?
Ask me for some PCAPs. I mean, because the PCAPs is really all it is. Yeah, I've got PCAPs of the ICMP traffic, PCAPs of the TCP traffic, and I tweet about it, and I have been tweeting about it for 4.5 years now. So if you are interested in looking at the PCAPs, or if you're a network operator and you have access to, I mean, for me, a really big thing here is access to peering data, flow data, network congestion data, stuff like that. My most insane big brain theory on this is that it's somebody trying to create network congestion so that QoS forces packets to take a route that you want them to take because you've popped something in between. So if you congest a route on the internet because you've popped the only other way that it's going to be able to get where it wants to go, then you're forcing everyone to drive down the street that you have control of. That's my biggest big brain theory on this.
If you unravel that a little bit, that gets really interesting considering some of the other geopolitical things we've talked about. Like, that's a thread that is like almost frightening to pull.
One of the times that we saw this in particular, our sensor was getting the shit kicked out of it exclusively on port 179 TCP, which is BGP.
Yeah.
Well, so it was like noise storm was happening over here, and somebody was clogging up ICMP or BGP, preventing it from being able to receive messages.
And the reason I've never given that theory much credence is because like we live in the future and like internet pipes shouldn't be getting clogged. But then when you come back to like Brazil, garbage internet, like there are third world countries still out there like that don't have great infrastructure. So clogging the pipes.
Philip
there are also other theories we have.
Philip says, are you willing to send the PCAPs to my Brazilian FTP server? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so we should we should certainly share some more of this, maybe at least have a blog with a link to a GitHub or something.
I'm begging to figure this out just so I can move on with my life.
So is everyone else at GreyNoise, actually, Andrew. So is everyone else. And if you're now, if you have access to network infrastructure, take a peek. Like, maybe you're not logging these things. Maybe you should see if you could turn on logging for maybe just a few hours to see if you see something similar, and maybe we'll send you a Raspberry Pi to put a sensor on or something. Awesome.
Thanks for humoring me on this, guys.
No, thanks for coming on to talk about this. This is fascinating.
Well,
Like,
it's
just
the
really
it's the
bizarre
latest.
and-
Finding the message love in it is really the latest. Like, okay, all right, like now,
It's
now what?
evolving,
Like,
and that's what's
Yeah,
they're
it's
gonna start
evolving.
talking
It's getting
to me
sentiment.
correctly, and I'm gonna just throw my computer in the fireplace.
Can whoever is doing this please continue cyberbullying Andrew Morris via Noise Storm?
In the
Because-
most efficient way humanly possible.
Yeah.
Maybe it's another internet proposal, but it just didn't stop. It said I love and then just won't stop.
I liked your joke earlier, Glenn, of we missed the live
We didn't get any of the live
Yeah, the live laugh. We got to go back in time
Deliver
to get
the
the live
laugh.
laugh. That's right. Awesome.
Amazing.
Well, I think that's a wrap for today. Ooh, I don't think we have an exit, do we? We didn't.
So,
we didn't do
I
the
do
bobbage.
have one. It's terrible.
Oh, Emily is ahead of the game.
But-
Sweet.
So, all right, that wraps up another episode of Stormwatch. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the ever-evolving world of cybersecurity. Remember, staying informed is your first line of defense against cyber threats. We'll see you.
Bye.